run you through the papers and the stories they're giving prominence to. Here to give us their thoughts, the journalist and author, Yasmin Alibi-Brown, and the political editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. Lovely to see you both. Do hope you're well. Yasmin, let's start with you, however. And, you know, I've seen some policy announcements from this government being roundly criticised. This one, the sending of asylum seekers to Rwanda, has been pilloried, I would suggest, you know, perhaps more than anything else I've seen, at least since 2019. Take us to the Mirror.
Well, yes, and congratulations to the Mirror for a perfect headline for what's happening. I mean, I know, the political crowd is saying, well, this is a dead cat. Boris Johnson is just trying to divert us from his Partygate and so on. That may be the case, but this really has shocked me. That Priti Patel, whose family, like mine, came from Uganda, right across the border from Rwanda, as desperate people who had to leave their homelands, thinks it's okay to behave in this way, turn up in Rwanda, which incidentally is one of the most riven, appalling, violent countries. In fact, there's a book that I must hold up. People read it, Do Not Disturb, which Archbishop Tutu said gave a really disturbing picture of this country. Yeah, not its people, but its politicians and the rivalries. We're sending desperate people there. I'm sure it won't happen because there'll be enough challenges to it. But I am shocked, rigid by this, I have to say. I'm almost in tears as I speak.
Nigel, let's take your first suggestion this morning, the front again of the front of the Guardian, their headline, asylum seekers plan branded inhumane. I suppose the issue for the government is that there is clearly an appetite for something to be done about small boat crossings from the continent to the United Kingdom. The question is what is to be done, because this plan apparently, is pretty much unifying people in opposition.
Yes, that's right. And the whole thing is that I think it is unworkable. If you are dealing with crime, what you do is you find some crime fighters. So, for instance, Boris Johnson keeps going on about recruiting 20,000 more police officers. So if you're dealing with people traffickers, then indeed deal with them and spend the money on getting more people to actually investigate them. I mean, there are all sorts of things you could have done without doing something quite as inhumane as this. So, for instance, we have a system at the moment where refugees can get a safe passage to Britain, either from refugee camps or bespoke arrangements like the Afghan program, the Syrian program, and now the Ukraine program. The same thing doesn't apply to asylum seekers. They've got to apply for asylum in the UK, and of course they've got to get here first. So before we left the EU, we had the Dublin regulation, which meant that an asylum seeker had to apply in the first safe country they arrived at. If they then got to Britain, they would be sent back. Now, because of Brexit, we've lost the Dublin regulation. What we should be doing is negotiating in a way whereby an asylum seeker can apply somewhere else outside Britain, to British embassies and other countries or whatever. But there's no need to actually pack them off like human cargo to an African country.
Yasmin, as we look at the front page of the Telegraph and they're taking the story, it appears to me to be alluding to the fact that actually, from Boris Johnson's position, he perhaps sees this as a win-win, that there's not a way in which he can lose out of this. If there are those significant legal challenges in the courts, as we expect, he can once again bash, lefty, politically active lawyers and presumably their Marxist mates in the judiciary of all places.
Yes, and this is the beginning. Be very, very careful. I returned to my life in Uganda where I grew up, and I was there till I was 23. Okay, the first thing Idi Amin did, I'm not saying Boris Johnson is Idi Amin, but when, regime, I think we have close to a regime here now, the first thing that is done by authoritarian governments is to go for the judiciary and lawyers. That's what Amin did, okay? And the other thing is, I think it is really important to remember that the reason they hate lawyers, and not all of them are left-wing, let me tell you, is that cases are then won in court for asylum seekers who were branded illegal and demonized ceaselessly, endlessly in our papers, okay? And I think something like the majority, 68% or something like that, when they actually get heard, they are given asylum. And asylum is such a difficult thing. I agree with Nigel that the traffickers should be got at. But are we really saying that those people fleeing Taliban, Afghans fleeing Taliban are, just coming here to live on council estates in South London and for the good life? Are we really saying that? We know what we did in Afghanistan. It is our responsibility. Once upon a time, black South Africans came into this country in terribly desperate situations. You hardly get any black South Africans coming now because the country is politically stable. And I find it astonishing that people use illegals for these people when a lot of them come from war-torn countries, some of whom have been supplied and sold our weapons.
Nigel, just before we move on to your next story, just a final word on immigration. It strikes me that if, as Boris Johnson is maintaining, there is a problem with the law that lawyers are taking advantage of, surely the thing to do, particularly if you enjoy an 80 majority, is to change the law itself. But for whatever reason, he seems, unlikely to want to do so.
Exactly, which is why it seems to be that this kind of thing is intended as a populist move. And of course, we've got local elections coming up next month, and he's got Partygate to get over. So that's the worry about this. But you're absolutely right. The one thing that would actually help is if the entire asylum system was speeded up. At the moment, it's taking about 2 years to actually get an application through and then approved or rejected, and in that time you're leaving people on £5.66 a day to live on. So if you actually spent this money, and it could cost as much as £2 million per asylum seeker being sent to Rwanda, spend the money on more people to actually process the applications, get everything speeded up, and that would make life much easier. It also would stop lawyers trying to fiddle the system and delay it.
Yasmin, your next story is in the front of the Star, and it's an interesting comment by Priti Patel. The idea that if people who break the law say sorry, we should forgive them. I mean, it's apposite, it's certainly topical, but that's a position and a half for a Home Secretary to take.
Exactly. So why bother to have a criminal justice system? Just have a sorry chamber where we drag everybody in to say, really sorry, Gov. And of course, she's referring to this because her own party and she herself have been found of wrongdoing, denied everything. I must say that they have denied wrongdoing, even though a good number of them, not Priti Patel, have been now fined. It is a very Christian thing, and it's Easter, so yes, let's forgive those who say sorry, but the law still applies, whether you're Boris Johnson or you are, a poor person living on the streets. They'll do anything to save their own skins, this lot. Really?
Nigel, your next story, the front of the Sun, involving, I'm sure, your favourite power couple, they're certainly mine, Harry and Meghan, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure how much power they've got any longer, but now they're basically not royals. Yes, they suddenly popped in rather surprisingly to come and see the Queen and Prince Charles. It's a little unclear from the story whether the row over their security is still going on. Of course, Prince Harry is suing to try and get armed bodyguards when he's in Britain. At the moment, the police won't provide them, quite rightly. I mean, they're they're not part of the royal family as such anymore. They don't do any public duties. They shouldn't have any public money. I'd imagine that the big question that was going on when they were chatting away to Prince Charles was this autobiography that Harry is writing, where apparently he's about to slag off his father. So I'm sure there was a lot of negotiation to be had.
Yeah, I'm on tenterhooks for the particular release of that book. Yasmin, though, your last story, fantastic one as well. Apparently, garden gnomes are an endangered species. Tell me more.
Oh God, we need the occasional laugh today, don't we? I mean, it's not true. I've seen hundreds of them on sale in garden centres. But you know, this is one of those things where everybody kind of gets exercised because a tradition is being lost and fewer people have garden gnomes. So let's all on this programme promise that at the end of this morning we'll all go and buy or adopt a gnome and stick it prominently in our gardens or wherever. Because apparently
sorry, Yasmin, no, you're not getting that promise out of me. Absolutely not at all. Sorry, I'll be the one with some taste on the programme this morning. We will see you guys in the next hour. For now, thank you very much indeed, Yasmin and Nigel. But you can stay exactly where you are after the break. Of course, we will be returning to the debate over our nation's immigration policy. The government bracing for legal challenges over its plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda. I will be speaking to a Home Office Minister to get their defence of the policy next.